RAW is coming to the Canon C70. Should we be excited? Hello, my name is Jonathan Palfrey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe as always, as it massively helps me out. Now, there's been some really big announcements from Canon today, including the R5c and, more importantly, short term, I think, the Canon C70. The Canon C70, is a great camera. We purchased one just before Christmas. We used it on quite a major shoot already. And what you get for your money is incredible. The image quality is up there with the likes of its bigger brother, the C300 Mark III. The only thing it was missing though was RAW functionality. Now, it was half the price of the Canon C300, so it was kind of an acceptable trade-off that you wouldn't get RAW in this camera because you're saving so much money. But now Canon have decided to actually add RAW capability to the C70 under a free firmware update in March. This is really exciting, and it may annoy a lot of C300 Mark III owners because maybe they went for that camera purely for that reason. I think the main reason why Canon decided to add RAW to this camera was because of the R5c. Now you've got a camera from them that covers a lot of what this camera can do, and with the capabilities of 8K RAW, it may start bringing up some questions about the purpose of the C70. So what is in this firmware update that is coming along? Well, the headline feature is the new light RAW, which looks like it's only going to be up to 25-30 frames. Slow motion, it looks like that's not going to be possible. I think it's a bit like the intraframe format. It's just the fact that the SD cards really can't handle any higher speeds. It may be also a processor limit inside the camera where it really can't handle the higher data rates required for doing 4K RAW at 50 and 60. That said, it will still be able to do proxies, and it'll be interesting to see whether it can shoot into 4K XFAVC proxies or if it's just HD proxies. Also, something that I spotted in the Canon announcement video, when you look on their menu that they're showing, I don't know if this is an editing mistake, they've taken it from another camera, so maybe the R5c or something, but it actually shows RAW ST as well as LT. So we know we're getting LT because that comes down to a low enough bit rate that the camera can record onto the SD cards. But it's interesting ST is listed there too, which I guess stands for standard rate. Now, I wouldn't be interested in that anyway. I think those bit rates are far too high, and I just don't think the camera is capable of even doing it. Whereas we know with the CF Express cards on the R5c, it can do it. So I think actually they've probably just taken the wrong clip and they've taken a menu shot from the R5c rather than the C70. Other features this firmware update has added includes interval recording and frame recording. Now, to be honest, I already thought this had it in the camera. I'm surprised it wasn't already there. It exists in pretty much every other cinema camera I've ever seen. It allows you to do things like stop motion or allows you to do sort of basic time lapses. Personally, I probably would still use a mirrorless camera, ideally for doing time lapses, because you can get that longer shutter speed, and that's just something you can't achieve when doing it with video cameras. They're limited to basically 1 frame per second, and the slowest shutter that you can achieve with that is probably 1/12, I think, in most cases is the best you can do. So it's nice that they've added that, but it's something that should have been there from the start. Speaking of stuff that should have been there from the start and unfortunately still isn't going to appear in this camera is a horizon level. I was actually quite surprised when we were shooting abroad. We're doing interiors. It's really important to make sure we got our verticals straight and that our camera is level. So with all the other cameras like our Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, I just put up the horizon level. It's an easy thing to look at and just double check that everything's correct. Unfortunately, that isn't there in the C70 and this update hasn't added it. For me, it's a really important feature. Cameras like even the A7 IV have it included. Of course, the FX3 has it as well. So I personally think that the C70 really should have that feature. It's a small feature, but a really important one that I hope one day is going to be added as an update in the C70. Finally, it's sad to see that there's no autofocus improvements for the C70. With the R5c coming out with its obviously incredible autofocus that it has from the R5, There was a hope, I guess, that maybe Canon would do something to try and advance the C70 autofocus. It's fine, it's okay, it's like the C200, it can do good face auto tracking, but it doesn't, like when you're a further distance away, it obviously doesn't have eye autofocus, it struggles if the person's not straight on like this. It has its limitations, and I was really hoping that we'd see some really good improvements to the autofocus to at least bring it up to a bit closer to what the other cameras can provide. Once again, Sony with the FX3 and the FX6 have excellent autofocus. You know, they have the eye autofocus that works from a really long distance away and it really sticks on like glue. And it's just the C70, it doesn't quite do that. It's good enough in most situations, but you can't 100% trust it. You can't guarantee that if it's locked on, it will stay locked on. There's always that risk it could come loose. Now, it does have the nice features like when someone walks away, the focus doesn't shift suddenly to the background. It can just only look for faces, and that's really nice, and that would stop it from kind of going crazy. But personally, I would like to see some improvements to the autofocus on the C70, which unfortunately looks like it probably isn't going to happen now. So what do you think about this firmware update? Do you think it improves the C70 as much as it should have done? Or are you very tempted by the R5c? Equally, are you a C300 owner and a bit annoyed that perhaps this now has the same features that your more expensive camera has? Now, of course, it doesn't shoot RAW at higher frame rates like the C300 Mark III can do, but it's getting close, isn't it, in terms of function and features? And if it was already kind of a difficult decision to go between the C70 and the C300 Mark III, well, maybe it's got even harder now with this firmware update. I'll definitely be doing lots of tests when the update comes out, so make sure you subscribe so you can watch along as I do those. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.